Hi, and welcome to the third season of One More Round. Today we're doing something interesting. We're mixing it all up a little bit.
I'm a bit excited.
Yes, so what's happening today is I am interviewing Mark Sephton for the third season.
I'm being interviewed.
Yes.
That's exciting.
That's very exciting because you've been following people for 3 seasons.
I have.
And so now it's our turn to follow you.
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm a little excited as to what she's going to ask.
Yes. First question is, who is Mark Sephton?
Who is Mark Sephton? Now, I always ask this question, and people always say what they do, right? So no doubt I would probably end up doing the same at some point. But when I think of Mark Sephton, I guess, I think of the journey that I've been through. I remember Mark Sephton as a boy who was scared, who didn't know his place, who didn't fit in, who was always compared to others and always seemed to be at a disadvantage during that moment of being compared. Then I think, what I really started to understand is the fact that we're all gifted with something, and we've just got to find as quickly as we possibly can what that is. And some people sadly die never knowing who and what is within them. And I think, once I started to realize that I was somebody who was confident, who was able to take his own experiences and to put it into the mix of solving a problem, that's when I guess I started to find who I was. So Mark Sephton today is a man who is confident, who is driven by influence, who wants to get in the head of men and women to make them be the best they can be. And for us to take on board the fact that we only get one shot at this life. And so Mark Sephton is a mix of his stories and experiences, but also his heart is really to make the world a better place through each and every interaction that I have. So within that, I'm courageous, I'm driven, I'm kind, I love deep, I love to create, I love to problem solve. So I'd say that's who I am, alongside the fact that I love my children, I love my family, and I love God, and for them and for me, that's like the premise that I'm an expression of not only who I am, but what I believe is the most important to me.
So you're an expression of your core and your beliefs and your family and God. So these are all resonating with you.
Yes.
So I'm going to shift a little bit.
Yeah.
What would you say is the one thing that you would love to be remembered by at the end of your journey?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I've just recently lost my grandma, and whenever you experience a death in the family or friend, it does always make me think, what is it that I want to be remembered for? And often it's what we leave inside people, not what we leave behind for people, that's going to have the biggest impact. So, as a father, in terms of my children, for me, my focus is on what can I leave in them. It's a little bit around, give a man a fish and you'll feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. My life is short, and so at a certain point, God will pull the plug and I'll transition into heaven, God willing. And then it's really a question of what do I leave behind that will continue outside of that. And so what I really want to be remembered for is someone who was true to himself, that I always went above and beyond, and that I lived from my heart. Because I can only have regrets based on if I wasn't true to me, and even if people don't agree with the choices that I make, at the end of the day, my definition of success is about being at peace with myself. And the only way to be at peace with myself is to be true to who I am, and to express that and never do something just to please somebody else. So what I want to be remembered for is the fact that I lived out of my heart and that I was true to me, and it's what I deposited in the hearts of men, women and children that helped them grow and actually did the same as what I did. So I think that's what I want to be
really
remembered
beautiful.
for. Thank you.
I love the whole where you want to leave something within them rather than behind you.
That's right.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So I've always known you. I guess people have always known you through your stories. You've been very gracious at letting us know, both through your books and several podcasts that you've taken part of, and of course your talks as well. You've always been very gracious of letting us, I guess, see your journey. Through your stories, what do you think, do you have one of those defining one that really made you, because you said you always wanted to help people be the best they, like awaken something in them to expand. So do you have one of those defining stories about what really lit this flame in you?
Yeah, I think that goes back to when I was probably 12. I think I shared the importance of needing to realize who I was. You know, people would compare me. Teacher may compare me to my more academic sister. My sister's an awesome teacher, and she's doing amazing things. And that's no fault of her own, but people naturally compare you to, you know, a sibling. And obviously that was hard for me to try and find out. And it was right in the middle of where I was being bullied as well, because I come for it as a child to work my way through my own parents' divorce. And it wasn't until a teacher called Mr. Aldridge came to the school. He was about 6'7", and he said, you know, kids, I want to bring basketball to the school. And my school was predominantly football. Always loved football, but the guys that played in that area weren't the sort of guys that I really resonated or liked particularly. So he brought basketball to the school, and I went to practices. And over the period of a number of months, weight started to fall off me. And he seed something in me, and he said, you know, Mark, when we start this basketball season for the first year in our school history, I want you to lead the team. And it was the first time in my life where I felt like I had something that was worth following. So for me, it was a defining moment where I had someone see something in me. He saw my commitment. He saw the fact that people listened to me. He saw the influence that I had on the group. He saw that I was leading and taking it seriously. And I think that for me really helped define me. It was one of those stories that I would say helped shape me. And in doing so, in being the man that was then pointed to and said, there's a leader, it naturally then makes me now want to point and say that there's a leader and invest. So I believe that everything we go through, those stories are not just about me, but they're about those that will come from other areas and from behind, and I can help them and move them forward. And I think it's that. I think it's the fact that somebody helped me, and now I want to help others. You know, and that's how it's kind of evolved.
I immediately want to ask you one question now that just rose, and that is, what is a good leader?
Yeah, so a good leader actually likes people. So I think liking people is for me the most important thing with leadership. It's the fact that you care and you show respect and you treat everybody as the ability to create and build something. Not a ruler, not someone who dictates, but somebody who pushes and encourages, you know, others to go before themselves. So for me, a good leader is somebody who likes people, but also creates an environment where other people can grow. Be a voice and not an echo is something that's a real key part of my message when I'm on stage or when I'm writing books. But it really talks about the fact there's so many copycats, there's so many of us conforming to what other people are doing. And the challenge of being a voice and not an echo is really finding out who you are, staying faithful to the gifts that you've been given, and really utilizing those gifts in order to really get your message out there and really make your life count, because there's too many people jump in on the same wagon saying the same things, but when you know who you are and you find out and listen to your own voice, then that's when we can really start to impact, and your message will really pop when you be a voice and not an echo.
All right, so now we're getting to the whole one more round portion. So Mark, what's one more round to you?
Well, I think, for me, when you pick a title, whether it's a TV show or a book or even a company, I think it's smart for the title to at least give you an idea of the essence of what you're trying to create. And one more round was a nice snappy phrase which really just brings to the fore the fact that there is an encouragement and a persuasion to say, come on, let's go again. Because, we can either have life deal us cards. You've shared, the fact that you lost your father. Other people have shared, other difficulties where they've lost a loved one as well. And yes, as much we need to honor that and have compassion, equally then as well, your father would never have wanted you to just, stop. He would want you to live out of what he's, imparted into you, and you do. And so for me, it's then a question of me saying, okay, whatever comes through that gate, in some ways, it's for me to deal with. There's a scripture which basically says that God won't let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. And I know that we've talked about that before. So, one more round is the fact that, okay, yes, while I would have liked to have not dealt with that, while I would have liked my parents to have stayed together at that point, because of the pain and the challenge, it's also the fact that, life happens. And so one more round is basically saying, regardless of what I face, I will brush myself down, I will wipe the sweat off my brow, I will do it afraid anyway. But it's that sense of, okay, one more round, we're going to go again. And so for me, it's just having that, regardless of how I feel, I'm going one more round.
You're going one more round. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. So who's your biggest inspiration?
Who's my biggest inspiration? Well, I think I've shared before that the word inspire means to breathe life into. Now, it's when people read like books or podcasts, and they pick up literature, yes, I do get inspired by it, but I find that for me, for somebody to actually breathe life into me, there has to be, a personal, connection. It has to be someone who, it's very specific. So, I mean, people like Gary Vaynerchuk, who are sharing really good and important messages, they do have an ability to breathe some life into you, but that sense of it being personal, I would probably, if I was going to be really personal about it, I would probably talk about my godfather. And the reason why I'd say him is because godparents is a very Catholic thing, and my godfather is more Church of England. And I remember when my parents asked my godfather to be my godfather actually prayed to God and said, God, do you want me to be, Mark's godfather? And God said to him, absolutely. And from the age of 3 days old, I think it was, my godfather prayed that the peace of God would live in my heart and I'd come to know Jesus personally. And he prayed that prayer. And when I was 13, I was at a Christian camp, and the speaker was indeed my godfather. And it was my godfather that brought the message that made me then find out not only what Christianity was, but who the heart of Jesus is. And so my godfather's been someone who has actually birthed me spiritually into the kingdom of God, but also has been a continual voice to me and into my life that's really helped define me. And he's somebody who has breathed life into me. So my godfather, you're inspired.
That's good.
Yeah.
So he inspires you.
Yeah.
Can you give us a tip of a book, or even maybe two books that you love or that you want people to read?
Well, I think at the age of 26, I'd never even read a book front to back. That's true. For somebody who's now wrote 2 books, it's a kind of an interesting fact. And even now, I would say reading is something that I find is work, but I know the importance of it. But the first book that actually I read front to back was actually not even a business book, but it was a real book. It was a life of challenge and overcoming, and that was a book called The Crossing, and that book was written by Ben Fogle and James Cracknell. Ben, obviously, he hosts different shows in the UK, and James Cracknell was an Olympic gold medalist with the rowing, and they were basically going across the Atlantic on a rowing boat. And it was horrendous, the things that they'd experienced: capsizing, losing all their fresh water overboard, becoming really ill, you know, and they showed different pictures of their sores on their bum from all the rowing. But it was a book I couldn't put down. And because it was about real life events, but also their mind and their ability to, regardless of the obstacle or challenge, to keep going through. So that's definitely one book that I would always shout out about, because for me it really resonated. Then the second one that I think was kind of like the catalyst for my entrepreneurial journey, and also probably my walk with God, was a book called Spirit Driven Success, which was by one of my mentors, Danny Johnson. And that book really was really about, you know, in the Bible it says, you know, your gifting makes room for you. And it was a lot about you embracing who you are, but more importantly than that, knowing the right environment in order to maximize what's within you. So a lot of it was around marketplace ministry. A lot of it was around, you know, being God conscious and bringing God into the elements of your heart and your business and what you do. So I think if you are spiritual, you have a heart for God, then this book actually really helps bring a lot of focus. It's not just fluff, it's practical as well as, you know, very personal. Yeah.
So Mark, you're a mentor to entrepreneurs. I guess that's your core role.
Yeah.
What makes a great mentor?
What makes a great mentor? I think first of all, they don't just make you work with them because they care about just making money. I think, you know, a great mentor is somebody who actually represents where you want to go. So, and I think that's really important as well. When people say, what mentor should I be working with? Well, it's really, you should be working with a mentor who's actually maybe 1, 2, 3, or however steps in front of you as to where you want to go. And so a great mentor is somebody who can really listen to what somebody needs, give them what they want, and then educate them with what they need. So it's somebody who's got a great mix of heart, but also application, because you don't just want something to be educated here, but also here. And then what's being shared, you really want that to then solve a problem, or at least move, you know, you further forward in the area in which you want to, you know, go. So for me, that's what makes a great mentor.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good one. So this is your 3rd season of One More Round. We're all probably very curious about where are you heading next? What's your future goals for your professional development? Yeah,
so I mean, people talk about 3-5 year goals, and I think they're important to have a loose grasp of where you're heading. So like I've always said, you know, start with the end in mind. It's really important. Now, I think once you define who you are and what you're put on earth to do, and then you define what it is you want your life to represent, which is one of the questions you asked, then I think it's then how do I express that in the best possible way. So if I think that my driver is influence, so if I'm committing to things that give me an opportunity to get inside people's heads, to inspire change, to show people what they're really capable of, then that's where I can find multiple expressions. So in terms of this being the 3rd series and what next, again, for me, it may not even be a question of doing something different, but the growth and the change will be in doing something on a bigger stage, or with more of an influence. So I'm working with entrepreneurs that own small to medium businesses. My growth would be, can I start influencing people in government and in the world of sport, and can there be more of a growth within that, where I'm taking the essence of who I am and what I've created and my unorthodox knowledge, and being able to put it alongside people that are right at the top end. And we all are on a journey where we start and we work with what we have. And so for me, what's next is really, as I continue to develop me, then what I bring to other people can then also expand. But it'll be more, I think, Anna, it'll be more around what stages and what platforms and who I'm working with. That's where the growth is, rather than necessarily what. But obviously the world's evolving, so I'm always on the lookout for the right environment for me to be able to express my influence and my message and my stories.
Yeah, that's very good. What has always kind of, I guess, made me a little bit curious is that you've talked to and work with entrepreneurs for such a long time now. I guess, are there any general tips that keeps popping up again and again, like something that you would just want to share with other people starting the journey or just being on the journey, some general little goodies that they can take with them?
Well, I think the first one is, what problem do you solve? Because if you don't solve a problem, you're not going to have a business. Then if you really want to see, a business really expand, then it's really about finding a solution that affects a lot of people, because then the business is scalable. So for me, the first question has to be, what problem do you solve? Then the second one, which we kind of touched on a little bit in your interview. So if you haven't seen my interview with Anna, make sure you do that. It's around about the fact that too many people in business, they make the business about them and not the customer or not the consumer. So that would be my second thought, is stop focusing on here and focus on there, because it's our customer whom we want to give the essence of what we have out. And then I think maybe a third one, in terms of working with entrepreneurs for so long, and what are some of the important things around that, is the fact that your reputation will always precede. So there's people in our world that have a lot of power, but not many of them that are actually using that for good. And I think being ethical, putting your money where your mouth is. You've got to admire somebody, I think, like Bill Gates, because even though he's got a lot of money, he also does do a lot that's for charity and philanthropy, and really gives his own time. So I think for me, it's about creating something that's bigger than yourself. I want to be able to sleep at night, so just making money isn't enough. People have got to create something that's bigger than them. And be able to educate and lead, because the world needs people, needs men and women to really show how we should really be conducting ourselves in life and in business. And so for me, I think those three is really important, knowing what problem you solve, not making it about you, and then creating something that's larger than yourself.
Yes. Yeah. So, and also I'm thinking, because it's a very big thing to transition from, for example, being employed and then going into having your own business. Give us some tips. What can we do?
Yeah, I mean, that question of, being employed and then having your own business can be a scary place. And for me, it was very much did full-time on my business and then got a part-time job. So I went from full-time employment to part-time employment, which kind of take care of the bread and butter in terms of bills, but then gave me a bit more time to be able to really put my energy into my business. And then there's always a tipping point where you need to let go of that part-time, take a bit of a deep breath, and actually try and find the money that you're getting from that part-time job within your own business, but you'll be able to pick that up based on how many customers that you've gathered and your own sense of worth. Because I think it's really important when you first move from employed to self-employed that you're responsible and that you go for 10. Really, I went for 10 customers that I could get a certain amount of money from, and that was my focus. So my focus was very much about starting small, doing the baby steps, but also, again, I just shared those 3 important things. And so if you're not solving a problem, then you really should stay employed until you know what problem you're solving, you know, and I think that's really critical. So I think the people that are making that step, for me, you've got to know that what you're going to bring to the table, people want. That's like paramount. If you know that people want it, then again goes back to done is better than perfect. You know, get it out there, because if it doesn't work, you can always go back into employed work. I had it with a client. She tried to set up her own business. She did, but didn't have the skills or maybe the ability to organize her time, and eventually it just didn't work, and so she went back into employment. But at least now she knows, you know. And so for me, sometimes you'll never know until you do it.
So try your wings.
You've got to try your wings. But if you've got a heart for creating your own, then I think you'd be mad to not at least express that.
And I guess get a mentor, try your wings, and get someone to give you honest feedback, or even pushes. Or
that's right. That's important. But it is important that you get a mentor within where you want to go, because sometimes it blows my mind that people just pick a mentor just because they're well known, but they may not be, you know, presenting themselves in the area you want to grow, you know, and develop.
Thank you so much, Mark, for sharing. It was
Absolutely,
lovely.
It was fun being the other side.
Yeah, it was lovely having this little switch around, and now we got to know you a little bit more about from the other side.
Absolutely.
So this is the wrap up.
Yeah, and you can find out more about me at marksefton.com.